or like, if anybody has a comment, I think that would be sort of helpful. I don't want to miss, like, if people are want to contribute or participate and they're just watching and chiming in. I don't want them to feel neglected.
Sure, we'll try and keep an eye on it.
Okay. So quick sort of review from the minutes from last time and see if there's any takeaways on that. I don't remember. I think everything else here is on the agenda. For actions, it was, there was an action around the deep dive for the profiling thing, which it happened last week. I wasn't able to sit in on that. There was some action from Yang about the proposal for promise hooks changes that we can talk about, and that looks like it as far as the actions out of the last time. So we should probably just go on to the agenda. So number 168, which is deep dive topics. It sounds like the first one happened. I wasn't able to attend. How did that go?
I think that went pretty well. I don't know if anybody else has any comments.
No, I think it was pretty okay. Yeah, went pretty well. Questions were asked and answered.
How many people were attended?
I think 5 or 6.
Yeah, it was in that ballpark, and I think we had the concrete next actions that were coming out of it, right? So.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to leave this open for people to kind of chime in with some other stuff and some other topics here. So that we can try and get the next one. Maybe we can go through the async context stuff. I know that we've been talking about that on our end, sort of in more depth and some different applications of it. So maybe in a few weeks or something we can do a deep dive on that. Some of these things we can talk about first of all. So okay. Number 148. I don't know who wants to. That's the profiling roadmap. I don't know who wants to talk to that.
Yeah, I think that was the subject of the deep dive. So I don't know that there's anything else to be said. Is there?
I think we are okay. Maybe there is only one thing is missing, that in a deep dive we didn't attach people to the action items. So I'm not sure that it's clear for everyone that what should be done.
Would it make sense? Can you just paste in there what you think that is, and that would start as a point to clarify it?
Yeah, for example, so we have these 5 action items, the finish, merge, pull request, and V8. I think it's basically, we can say it's Matthias and the V8 team who is working on this. And after that, we have to come up with the CI config for test, come up with basic testing scenarios, integration testing scenarios, and performance benchmark story. But we don't have to discuss them now. Just we shouldn't forget them.
Yep. Sounds good.
Yeah,
I think that'll be a few people.
Yes, I would recommend that maybe we should first focus to the pull request, because if anything changes, then it doesn't make much sense to come up with testing stories. And after it's merged, we can move forward.
Yeah, that seems quite reasonable.
Okay, then I think that's it from CPU profiling part.
Okay, great. So number 134, the monkey patching, eliminating monkey patching. I don't have any update here. I don't know if anybody else has any update. I feel like this is maybe stalling a little bit.
I think I had an action to open up an issue about the diagnostic channel, which I know I haven't done yet. So I'm still have that on my list of things to do. I think that's related, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last question here was like, okay, where do we start? And I think at the summit there were some questions around like, do you use that diagnostic channel, the existing diagnostic channel thing, or do you start fresh with something, or start with a clean slate and try and put some stuff in, build it up, from scratch, more or less.
Yeah, exactly. So I was just gonna, I have the action to open an issue to start that discussion, see if we can get the things moving again.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Next one. Async hooks. So I think last time there was a question about promise hooks. Yang, you were going to.
Yeah, I was going to put together a document on what would be best for performance and which direction we want to take. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to write it down and also come up with a definitive set of things we want to do. I did talk a couple of times to Ali and Benedict, though, about this, and one of the things that probably will help a lot is not to attach the resource to every async call. Instead, you would just get the async ID for those callbacks. That would help a lot, and that would also include that assignment of the async IDs would be inside of V8 instead of outside, as it is currently implemented.
So, sorry, there was some background noise. So you said it would help a lot to not attach the resource to the what? The promise hook?
Yeah. If we don't pass the resource, but instead of the resource, just pass the async ID to the promise hook, that would help a lot to make things run faster. Because that way, often we don't even have to, instantiate promises and materialize them. And we would, however, have the async ID.
So for, are there cases where anybody would actually use it?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay.
So the point of putting a document together is to gather feedback. But like I said, unfortunately, I didn't have time to do that yet. Yeah. Another thing we discussed, and I'm not entirely sure whether it makes sense, though, is in the spec, there are quite a few temporary promises being created. But a lot of those are not actually observable in regular JavaScript. They are, however, through promise hooks. So the question is, can we skip those for promise hooks?
As long as you, in the end, the context gets restored, yes.
Right. So I'm not entirely sure whether that's the case. And I'll just have to dig deeper into the implementation and see how that works out.
So more or less, if the async ID comes out the correct one after the chain, and we skip some in the middle, absolutely.
Okay.
Please do. Like, this is my. Those do not surface at all in JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
So, or even in user-controlled C++. So, right. I would like, it's just something internal to JavaScript itself, to V8. So, I would like, as long as out of it there is the correct context, we are grand.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And one last thing, that's probably a no-brainer, I think, is that the promise hook should not be bound to the isolate. but instead to the native context.
Does that fix the electron issue that you guys were talking about last time, or?
Yeah, that would fix the electron issue, and generally it just makes a lot more sense. And if we think into the future, and maybe at some point the browser will also want to have this kind of instrumentation, and in the browser it totally doesn't make any sense to tie this into the isolate.
Okay.
So yeah. But
Okay.
yeah, I definitely have to put this document together. And I'm still missing some details, and also I don't have a lot of time. But yeah, this is something I have to do.
Okay. Okay, anything else on async hook stuff?
There's not a lot more. So Benedict was able to improve the performance of promises even further, but that only means that the gap between the performance of promises and like between when enabled or disabled is just growing.
Michael, you've got a lot of background noise. I think it's you. Can you go on mute?
Sure. Hold on, let me find the button.
And sorry, Yang, what was it that you just said about Benedict was able to improve perf further, but?
Yeah, so most performance improvements that we have implemented for promises do not affect the case when promise hooks are enabled, because there's just no way to cut corners for async hooks, or at least in many cases there's no way to do that, which means that the gap between when async hooks are enabled or disabled is just growing even further.
Okay.
So I think he was throwing some numbers like 50% around.
50% impact for having promise hooks enabled?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's because promises got faster, not because async hooks got slower.
Okay.
On happy, right?
Sorry?
On 50% on
I think
on which benchmark? On which benchmark?
I think it's happy, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Anything else from anyone with on async hooks? No. Okay. So async context formalization. So I don't have. I've got some code that's trying to sort of build a dynamic monkey patching of all of the Node libraries that will generate the various events that we've talked about, and it's close. I haven't had a lot of time to work on it. Hopefully next week I can actually have something to share, just as sort of a contrasting point of view of a model, versus what async hooks provides, but other than that, I don't think I have anything to share.
So there. What do you have for when you're saying your like monkey patching stuff?
Yeah, so if you look at that, there's a branch on that async context definition thing. I can send you. It's like whatever GitHub Mike Hoffman async context definition, and there should be a public branch on there called
add monkey patch tracing or tracking.
Yep. And so you can look at that, and there's kind of like this. Some of the code's really like, I don't know. We had an intern a few years ago, and he did a really good job in identifying all of these different transition points. Some of the code is a little, I don't know, a little head scratchy maybe. But I think the key thing is we've got this data file that we can then just sort of monkey patch all these different places inside of Node runtime or Node libraries, JavaScript libraries, and generate the right event. And so I'm sort of working through that a little bit. And I think it's pretty close. So what that will hopefully give us is just some, we'll say like, hey, you run something simple, and then we can look at the event stream and say like, does this accurately map the context as we think about it and as we've described or tried to describe in the text. And so that's just sort of an exercise, I think, on a couple of fronts. I think it's helped, just internally in some discussions that we've been having here recently, and hopefully it'll help, either say, it'll help either prove that this is something that we think is, workable, or this is something that's off in some way. So that's kind of the idea there. Kelvin, if you have any feedback on that, feel free to chime in. If you have questions, feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer. It's useful to have, conversations and questions, and have people sort of chime in when there's things that aren't clear with that stuff.
Yeah. So you're planning on talking about this in more depth in 2 weeks, right?
I hope it'll be ready to that. Like I can say like, hey, if you want to try, this automagic generation of the event stream on some code, grab this thing and use it. And then we can actually go through the code, and we can talk about some different abstractions that like sort of introduce this notion in here of in that code of a continuation, right? Which is sort of a function that's going to, it gets created or linked in one context, and then it gets executed in another asynchronous context, right? Which is kind of the thing that we're all talking about. And so there's sort of some constructs that can, if desired, hoist that up into user code, so there's more visibility to the user who's reading the code. You can translate a function or convert a function into one of these continuations. And hopefully we can use that to kind of use this code to sort of, as sort of an example, and use it to discuss some of these concepts in more detail, and use it to say like, hey, here's a real world program. What is the asynchronous model from it? It's probably not going to work with native promises, and it's not going to work with async await. So you probably have to run it on some, older versions of Node, just because of the constraints there. It may be possible to hack into some of the async hook stuff to get the right events in the right place there. But I haven't thought through that yet. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take a look at it before 2 weeks from now. I've been spending a little bit of time like coming up with a sort of visualization for for async context tracking, and which is trying to be informed of both like concepts in the async context formalization paper and in async hooks. And this is something that I think I'd like to talk about in 2 weeks as well.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we still need to refine it, but.
Yeah, certainly. I think when, I don't know, like I would say, just chime in either on the call whenever, because this is still going to be sitting on the agenda, right? So just chime in the call, or, chime in whenever the meeting gets posted, being like, you want to discuss XYZ or something.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd love to see, and feel free to reach out, early if you want, preliminary feedback on anything. So.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yep. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions there?
It might make sense to open an issue that talks about like generating visualizations, and then if you have anything you want to share in advance, people can read that and be ready.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. This is something that I guess has been progressing a lot in just the last few days. I'll open a tracking issue on the Diagnostics working group repo.
Then you can just tag it, like if you want to talk it, next meeting you're ready, just tag it with the agenda, it'll automatically show up. And
yep. Okay. That sounds good. I'll do that.
Okay, trace event tracking issue number 84. I know there's a number of different things going on here. but I don't know where they're at. The last I recall seeing was that there was a James was doing some playing around, and there was some perf pain points, I think, with some of the sort of, I think he was trying to test, if I'm not mistaken, he was trying to test if a category was enabled or something, and that was slow from JavaScript into trace events. I don't know if there's any other update, if anybody knows more detail on this.
Yeah, regarding the JavaScript intrinsic that was planned, nothing moved.
Okay.
It's not particularly high priority for us, and we have a lot of things on our hands right now.
Okay.
Number 82, which is adding trace points, there's some progress on that. Chin is working on adding some to some of the static places. So I can just, I've seen the discussion there, so there's some progress on that one.
Okay. Okay. Anything else with that? All right, that's everything on the agenda. Is there anything else from anybody? This is a short one, so.
The one thing I'd throw out is I've been pretty busy, so I haven't had a chance to sort of chase down people's actions from the Diagnostics Summit, but I do hope to get to that, not next week because I'm on vacation, but the week after. So if you've got an action and you can spend some time on it, that would be great.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like we generated a lot of great things to do at the Diagnostics working group.
Yeah.
There's this just question of actually starting to do some of those great things.
Yeah, so I'll try and spend some time doing a little bit of rounding up to see, which ones we've completed, which ones we haven't, and what we might start to be pushing on. Like, for example, I'm trying to find somebody internal to work on pulling Node report into core. But on the other ones, I'll try and see whoever had the action to like do the write-up and make sure we actually make some progress on those.
Yeah, that would be, I think, a good forcing function.
Yeah. So hopefully before next meeting.
Yeah. Okay. If there's nothing else, I guess we're all done, folks.
Great. Talk to you guys next time.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Wait,
Bye.
folks, wait.
Oh, yeah, hold on.
No.
Yep.
Somebody's gone. I have
Okay.
put it on other. We've just done on 0x. Okay, it's on the QA and other. We didn't do the QA and we didn't do the other.
Sorry, what is the? You faded out there. What's the?
Oh, sorry. We have just released today the new version of 0x. So my colleague David just released it as the flame graph tool. So it supports. It's able to create flame graphs from both the tick profiler and dtrace and perf, and all of them, more or less normalizing the data format in from all of those to something identical that can actually be plotted together. So I will ask David to put an issue on it. I wanted to have some feedback from this from Young, but it probably faded away. Anyway, that's about it. Okay, check it out because it has changed quite a bit from the previous release. So it's actually worth checking. It does some interesting thing, especially with inlineable functions and stuff like that. So you might want to take a look. Okay, maybe I can ask him to join next meeting if you want to go for a demo or explain a couple of things that just changed or something like that.
Yeah, a demo would be great. If you open an issue and get it on the agenda, or
yeah, I'll open an issue. I'll tell him to open an issue actually, which is better. Okay.
What's the name of the library again?
0x. Like this.
Oh, okay.
It's not.
Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, it's listed somewhere as well in the available tools. We have improved. It has been improved quite a bit. So it's slightly better than what it was before. So I am happy. We are very happy, by the way. It's also because it works on Windows, so that covers some use cases that it wasn't working before. Because it doesn't support ETW. ETW support is out of the question. But it's whatever. Like it took me 2 weeks to get something out of that, and it was a mess. So, but it's still working very well. It's also some interesting stuff. Like you should check. I will invite him to write a little bit of a write-up of the new release on the diagnostic group and so on. It's pretty cool.
Great, perfect.
And
Okay.
I guess Matteo's other point was we didn't ask if there's any questions on the YouTube channel.
Yes, that was the other thing that we keep forgetting. So somebody has left, but
was anybody watching what was on the YouTube? Any comments on the YouTube?
Yeah, so far there's 2 comments, not questions. It says, "Hi guys, all of you so amazing, such stream and discussion very motivating for beginners." And the other one says basically they're new to Node.js. So maybe we'll just give people a couple minutes to ask questions if they have any.
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, and feel free to chime in and or not.
We'll just maybe wait 1 minute so people have a chance, and if there aren't any, then we can probably assume there aren't any questions. I'm guessing at this point somebody would have typed one if they were going to, so
all right,
we can probably call it a day.
Great. Okay, cool. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Talk to everybody later.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.